Sarah Martinez stood at her bedroom window in the small Texas town she called home, her dark eyes fixed on the horizon, where the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and gold. The view reminded her of her father's stories about the endless desert landscapes of his homeland. At 22, she had grown up straddling two worlds, her father's Middle Eastern heritage and her mother's vibrant Mexican-American culture. The sweet aroma of her mother's fresh-baked pan dulce wafted up from the kitchen below, mingling with the exotic spices her father used in his cooking. It was this unique blend of cultures that had shaped Sarah's worldview and ignited her passion for exploring beyond the boundaries of their small town. "Sarah, mi amor," her mother's voice called from downstairs, "your acceptance letter from the university in Dubai arrived." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She had applied for a cultural exchange program months ago, dreaming of experiencing the world her father had so vividly described throughout her childhood. With trembling hands, she rushed down the wooden staircase, nearly colliding with her father, who stood at the bottom, holding the envelope with pride gleaming in his eyes. "Open it, Habibti," he encouraged, using the Arabic term of endearment. He had called her since she was a child. The kitchen was warm and inviting, filled with the competing aromas of Mexican and Middle Eastern cuisine. Her mother, Elena, wiped her hands on her apron, flour dusting her dark hair, while her father, Karim, adjusted his reading glasses. Sarah took a deep breath and carefully opened the envelope. "I got in!" she exclaimed, her voice trembling with excitement. "They're offering me a full scholarship." Her parents embraced her, their joy palpable in the small kitchen. Elena's eyes glistened with tears of pride, while Karim beamed with satisfaction. They had always encouraged their daughter to embrace both sides of her heritage, and now she would have the chance to explore her father's homeland properly. "Your grandfather would have been so proud," Karim said softly, his accent thickening with emotion. "He always said education was the key to understanding between cultures." In the weeks that followed, Sarah prepared for her journey. Her room became a chaos of packing boxes and travel guides. Elena taught her daughter family recipes, insisting that food was the best way to share culture with new friends. Karim spent evenings telling her more about the customs and traditions she would encounter, helping her polish her Arabic. The night before her departure, Sarah sat on the front porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the Texas sky. Her childhood friend Maria joined her, bringing a thermos of Mexican hot chocolate. "I can't believe you're really going," Maria said, pouring the rich drink into 2 cups. "Promise you won't forget about us small-town folks when you're living your glamorous international life." Sarah laughed, but her voice held a note of uncertainty. "I'm scared, Maria. What if I don't fit in? I'm not fully Middle Eastern or fully Latina. Sometimes I feel like I don't belong anywhere completely." Maria squeezed her friend's hand. "That's exactly what makes you special, Sarah. You're a bridge between worlds. And besides, your father always says that hospitality is the cornerstone of Arab culture. They'll welcome you with open arms." As they sipped their chocolate, Sarah shared her dreams of working in international business, of creating connections between different cultures, just as her parents had done. The warm Texas night wrapped around them like a comfortable blanket, but Sarah's mind was already traveling across oceans to the adventures that awaited her. The next morning, as Sarah stood in the airport with her family, her mother pressed a small package into her hands. "Open it when you get there," Elena insisted, her voice thick with emotion. "It's something to remind you of home." Karim adjusted his daughter's hijab, which she had chosen to wear for her journey. "Remember, Habibti, you carry both our cultures in your heart. That is your strength, not your weakness." As Sarah walked through the security checkpoint, she turned back one last time to wave at her parents. They stood together, her mother's head resting on her father's shoulder, a living testament to love bridging cultural divides. With a deep breath, Sarah stepped forward into her new adventure, unaware that fate had plans far beyond her imagination. Dubai's skyline sparkled like a constellation of man-made stars as Sarah's plane descended through the evening sky. The modern architecture stood in stark contrast to the ancient desert that stretched endlessly beyond the city limits. Her heart raced with anticipation as she clutched the still unopened package from her mother. After clearing customs, Sarah made her way to the university's international student housing. The lobby was a bustling intersection of cultures, with students from every corner of the globe chatting in a symphony of languages. As she struggled with her luggage, a young woman in a beautifully embroidered abaya approached her. "You must be Sarah Martinez," the woman said with a warm smile. "I'm Layla Al-Rashid, your student mentor. Welcome to Dubai." Sarah immediately felt at ease with Layla's friendly demeanor. As they walked to Sarah's assigned room, Layla explained her role in helping international students adjust to life in Dubai. "My brother always says that true hospitality means making others feel at home, even when they're far from it," she mentioned casually. Finally, alone in her room, Sarah opened her mother's package. Inside, she found a hand-embroidered shawl that cleverly combined traditional Mexican and Arabic patterns. Wrapped within it was a note, "Para que nunca olvides quién eres y de dónde vienes," so you never forget who you are and where you come from. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of orientation sessions, Arabic language classes, and cultural adjustment workshops. Sarah threw herself into her studies, excelling in her international business courses. Her unique background and genuine interest in bridging cultures quickly made her stand out among her peers. One afternoon, while helping Layla organize a cultural exchange event at the university, Sarah's life took an unexpected turn. Layla's brother, Kamal al-Rashid, arrived to give a guest lecture on sustainable business practices in the Middle East. The moment he walked into the room, Sarah felt time slow down. Kamal carried himself with quiet confidence, his tailored suit and perfectly trimmed beard, speaking of refined taste. But it was his eyes that caught Sarah's attention. They held a gentle wisdom that seemed to look straight into her soul. When Layla introduced them, Sarah noticed how his professional demeanor softened into a genuine smile. "Ah, the brilliant Mexican-Arab student I've heard so much about," Kamal said, his voice carrying a hint of playfulness. "My sister tells me you're revolutionizing her cultural exchange programs." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "I'm just sharing what I've learned from growing up between cultures," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. After his lecture, Kamal joined Sarah and Layla for coffee in the university's garden courtyard. The conversation flowed effortlessly as they discussed everything from ancient trade routes to modern global economics. Sarah was impressed by how Kamal balanced his traditional values with progressive ideas about business and culture. "Our family's business was built on the principle that progress and tradition can coexist," Kamal explained, his passion evident in his voice. "We're one of the largest sustainable energy developers in the region, but we never forget the wisdom of our ancestors." As the weeks turned into months, Sarah found herself spending more time with the Al-Rashid siblings. Layla became her closest friend, while her encounters with Kamal grew more frequent and increasingly meaningful. He would often appear at cultural events, his eyes seeking her out in the crowd, and their conversations would stretch for hours. One evening, during a traditional music festival on campus, Kamal found Sarah standing alone, watching the performers. The desert breeze carried the scent of jasmine, and the haunting sounds of the oud filled the air. "You seem lost in thought," he said, joining her in the shadows of a palm tree. "I was thinking about how music speaks beyond cultural boundaries," Sarah replied. "It reminds me of my parents' home, how they found harmony between their different worlds." Kamal's eyes softened. "Some people are bridges, Sarah. They help others cross the divisions that fear and misunderstanding create." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "Would you join me for dinner tomorrow? There's a restaurant that serves a fusion of Arabian and Latin American cuisine. I thought you might appreciate it." Sarah's heart fluttered. "I'd like that," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady despite the electricity running through her veins. As they stood there, the music washing over them, neither could have predicted how their lives would soon become intertwined in ways that would test the very foundations of their beliefs about love, family, and destiny. The fusion restaurant Kamal had chosen was situated in an old district of Dubai, where traditional architecture blended seamlessly with modern design. As they were led to their table on the rooftop terrace, Sarah gasped at the view of the city lights twinkling against the desert sky. The table was set in a private corner, surrounded by hanging gardens that created an intimate atmosphere. "This place reminds me of a story my father used to tell," Kamal said as they settled into their seats, "about ancient traders who would travel between continents, bringing not just goods but ideas, cultures, and love stories that would change the world." Sarah smiled, thinking of her own parents' unlikely romance. "Sometimes the most beautiful things come from unexpected combinations," she replied, gesturing to the menu that featured dishes combining Middle Eastern and Latin American flavors. Their conversation flowed effortlessly through the evening, moving from childhood memories to dreams for the future. Kamal spoke of his vision to transform his family's business into a force for positive change in the region, while Sarah shared her hopes of creating international educational programs that would bridge cultural divides. "You know," Kamal said, his eyes reflecting the soft candlelight, "when Layla first told me about you, I thought she was exaggerating about finding someone who perfectly understood both worlds, but now I see she wasn't doing you justice." As they shared a dessert that combined Mexican chocolate with Arabian dates, Kamal's phone buzzed repeatedly. He apologized, explaining that his uncle, Fahad, was insisting on an immediate response to a business matter. Sarah noticed how his expression tensed slightly at the mention of his uncle's name. "Family business can be complicated," he said, choosing his words carefully. "My uncle has traditional views about how things should be done. He believes in maintaining strict cultural boundaries, especially in business relationships." Sarah understood the unspoken implication. "And what do you believe?" she asked, her heart racing slightly. Kamal reached across the table, taking her hand. "I believe that the future belongs to those who aren't afraid to cross those boundaries. My father taught me that before he passed away, and it's a principle I've always tried to honor." Their evening extended into a moonlit walk through the historic district, where the narrow alleyways echoed with centuries of stories. Kamal pointed out architectural details that showed the intersection of different cultures throughout history, his knowledge of the city's heritage adding depth to every observation. As weeks passed, their relationship deepened. Layla, thrilled to see her brother and best friend falling in love, helped arrange opportunities for them to spend time together. They would meet for coffee between Sarah's classes and Kamal's business meetings, share quiet moments in the university's gardens, and explore the city's hidden treasures together. One evening, while attending a cultural festival at the university, Sarah received a video call from her parents. Kamal was with her, and she hesitated for a moment before including him in the frame. Her mother's eyes widened with delight, while her father's expression held a knowing smile. Papa, this is Kamal al-Rashid," Sarah introduced, her voice trembling slightly. "He's Layla's brother, and he's very special to me." The conversation that followed was a beautiful chaos of English, Arabic, and Spanish, with all parties making earnest efforts to understand each other. Sarah watched as Kamal charmed her parents with his respectful manner and genuine interest in their culture, even attempting a few phrases in Spanish that he had learned secretly. However, not everyone was as accepting of their growing relationship. At a family dinner in the Al-Rashid mansion, Sarah could feel the weight of disapproving glances from some of the older relatives, particularly Uncle Fahad. He spoke little but watched their interactions with calculating eyes. "You must understand our concerns," Fahad said during a moment when he found Sarah alone. "Our family has maintained its position through careful alliances and adherence to tradition. Kamal's choices affect more than just himself." Before Sarah could respond, Layla appeared at her side, linking their arms. "And some traditions evolve, Uncle," she said firmly. "Sarah has brought more wisdom and understanding to our family than any business alliance could." Later that night, as Kamal drove Sarah back to her dormitory, she was unusually quiet. He parked the car and turned to face her, his expression serious. "I saw you speaking with my uncle," he said softly. "Whatever he said, please know that it doesn't change anything for me. My feelings for you are stronger than any tradition." Sarah looked into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there. "Are you sure? I don't want to cause problems in your family." Kamal's response was to reach into his pocket and pull out a small box. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," he said, opening it to reveal a ring that combined traditional Arabic patterns with subtle Latin American design elements. "Sarah Martinez, will you help me prove that love knows no boundaries?" Sarah's heart seemed to stop as she stared at the exquisite ring in Kamal's hands. The intricate design caught the streetlights, sending sparkles dancing across their faces. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized that the ring perfectly represented their union. Two distinct cultural traditions woven together into something uniquely beautiful. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." Kamal slipped the ring onto her finger, and they shared a moment of pure joy under the starlit Dubai sky. As he held her close, Sarah could feel his heart beating, as rapidly as her own. They were writing their own chapter in the ancient story of love transcending boundaries. The next morning, Layla's delighted screams echoed through the student housing complex when she saw the ring. "I knew it. I knew from the moment I introduced you two that something magical would happen." She hugged Sarah tightly, then stepped back with a more serious expression. But now comes the challenging part, announcing it to the family. The Al-Rashid family's reaction to the engagement was as varied as the patterns in a Persian carpet. Kamal's mother, Amira, welcomed Sarah with cautious warmth, clearly torn between her love for her son and her awareness of societal expectations. Several of Kamal's younger cousins were openly enthusiastic, while the older generation maintained a careful politeness that barely masked their disapproval. Uncle Fahad's reaction was particularly concerning. During the formal engagement announcement at the family mansion, he sat at the head of the table, his face an unreadable mask. "This is quite unexpected," he said, his words carrying the weight of unspoken implications. "Perhaps we should discuss the business implications of such a union before making any hasty decisions." Kamal's response was firm, but respectful. "This isn't a business merger, Uncle. This is a marriage between two people who love each other and share a vision for bridging cultures." The tension in the room was palpable, until Layla skillfully diverted the conversation to wedding preparations. As the women began discussing ceremony details, Sarah caught a glimpse of something dark passing across Fahad's face before he excused himself from the table. When Sarah's parents arrived in Dubai for the wedding preparations, they brought with them the warmth and vibrancy of their Mexican-Arab heritage. Elena immediately bonded with Amira over their shared experiences of cross-cultural marriage, while Karim's presence seemed to ease some of the older relatives' concerns about the union. The wedding preparations became a beautiful dance of combining traditions. Sarah and Kamal decided to honor both cultures in every aspect of their ceremony. The invitations featured both Arabic calligraphy and Spanish text. The menu would offer a fusion of Middle Eastern and Latin American cuisines. Even the wedding attire was being specially designed to incorporate elements from both traditions. One evening, as Sarah worked with Layla and Amira on the wedding plans in the family's grand living room, she overheard a heated discussion between Kamal and Fahad in the adjacent study. Though their voices were hushed, the tension was evident. "You're being naive," Fahad's voice carried through the ornate wooden doors. "This union could destabilize everything we've built. The board members are already expressing concerns." "The board members? Or just you, Uncle?" Kamal's response was sharp. "This is my life, my choice. Sarah brings fresh perspectives that could strengthen our company, not weaken it." The conversation ended abruptly when they realized others might be listening. Sarah pretended to be absorbed in reviewing flower arrangements when Kamal emerged from the study, his face tense but softening immediately upon seeing her. Later that night, in the privacy of the garden where they first began falling in love, Sarah expressed her concerns to Kamal. "Your uncle sees me as a threat to everything your family has built. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm disrupting too much." Kamal took her hands in his eyes fierce with conviction. "You are not disrupting anything. You're helping us evolve. Change is always threatening to those who profit from keeping things the same, but I've seen how you've already begun transforming our company's culture for the better through your work with our international outreach programs." The following weeks brought a whirlwind of activities. Wedding preparations accelerated, and Sarah found herself caught between final examinations at the university and countless meetings with wedding planners, caterers, and designers. Through it all, Layla remained her constant support, helping her navigate both the practical and cultural aspects of preparing for an Arab wedding. As the big day approached, Sarah received an unexpected visit from Amira, who brought with her a centuries-old family necklace. "This has been passed down through generations of Al-Rashid brides," she said, carefully placing it around Sarah's neck. "It belongs to you now, my daughter." The gesture brought tears to Sarah's eyes. It was more than just a piece of jewelry. It was acceptance, a recognition that love could indeed bridge any divide. Yet, as she admired the necklace's reflection, in her mirror, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their challenges were far from over. The day of the wedding dawned with a spectacular desert sunrise, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The grand ballroom of Dubai's most prestigious hotel had been transformed into a magical space where two cultures merged seamlessly. Arabic calligraphy intertwined with Mexican florals, while traditional lanterns cast a warm glow over tables decorated with both Middle Eastern and Latin American motifs. Sarah stood before the mirror in her bridal suite, her wedding dress a masterpiece of cultural fusion. The traditional white gown featured intricate Arabic embroidery alongside subtle Mexican textile patterns. Her veil, handmade by her mother and Amira working together, incorporated lace from both traditions. Around her neck, the Al-Rashid family necklace sparkled, its ancient gems catching the morning light. "You look like a princess from both our worlds," Elena said, adjusting her daughter's veil with trembling hands. Layla, serving as the maid of honor, nodded in agreement while wiping away tears. The ceremony itself was a carefully choreographed blend of traditions. As Sarah walked down the aisle on her father's arm, traditional Arabic music seamlessly transitioned into Mexican wedding melodies. Kamal waited at the altar, his eyes shining with love and pride, dressed in a formal thobe with subtle contemporary touches that complemented Sarah's gown. The exchange of vows was performed in 3 languages, Arabic, Spanish, and English, symbolizing their commitment to embracing all aspects of their shared future. When Kamal placed the wedding band on Sarah's finger, joining it with her unique engagement ring, the entire assembly could feel the power of the moment. During the reception, the celebration reached new heights. Traditional Arabic dancers performed alongside Mexican folkloric dancers, creating an unexpected but harmonious spectacle. The feast featured an innovative menu that fused Middle Eastern and Latin American cuisines, drawing appreciative comments from guests of both cultures. "You've managed to create something truly extraordinary," Amira told the newlyweds, her initial reservations seemingly forgotten in the joy of the moment. Even some of the more conservative family members appeared to be won over by the beautiful integration of traditions. However, Uncle Fahad's absence from the celebration was conspicuous. When asked, his wife mentioned a sudden business emergency that required his immediate attention. Kamal's jaw tightened at the news, but he quickly masked his reaction with a smile, unwilling to let anything dampen their special day. As the evening progressed, Sarah and Kamal shared their first dance to a specially composed piece that blended Arabic and Latin rhythms. The dance floor soon filled with guests attempting to learn steps from each other's traditional dances, creating moments of laughter and connection that bridged any remaining cultural gaps. Near midnight, Kamal led Sarah to a private terrace, overlooking the city lights. "I have something for you," he said, presenting her with an intricately carved wooden box. Inside lay a delicate journal bound in leather, its cover embossed with their names in both Arabic and Spanish. "This is for us to write our story," he explained, his voice soft with emotion. "Every page represents a new chapter in our life together. We'll fill it with our adventures, our challenges, and our triumphs." Sarah traced the embossed letters with her fingertips, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "Our story is just beginning," she whispered, leaning into his embrace. Later that night, during the traditional farewell ceremonies, Sarah caught a glimpse of Hassan, Kamal's trusted business advisor, attempting to get his attention. Despite the festivities, Hassan's expression seemed troubled, and he was holding his phone with an urgency that suggested important news. However, before he could reach Kamal, Layla intercepted him, engaged him in conversation, and skillfully steered him away from the celebrating couple. As the celebration drew to a close, guests departed with small gifts that represented both cultures. Tiny boxes containing traditional Arabic sweets paired with Mexican wedding cookies. The fusion of traditions had created something unique and memorable, just as Sarah and Kamal had hoped. In their honeymoon suite, Sarah gazed out at the city skyline, while Kamal made a brief phone call to confirm their travel arrangements for the following day. They had planned an intimate honeymoon that would take them through both their cultural homelands, beginning in the ancient cities of the Middle East and ending with a visit to Sarah's family in Texas. "Everything is set for tomorrow," Kamal announced, joining her at the window. "Our new adventure begins at dawn." He wrapped his arms around her waist, and they stood together, watching the city lights twinkle against the desert darkness. Little did they know that fate had other plans, and their adventure would take a turn neither of them could have anticipated. As they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms and dreams of their future, dark clouds were gathering on their horizon, threatening to transform their fairy tale into something far more complex. Sarah awoke to the gentle light of dawn filtering through the suite's silk curtains. The previous day's joy still lingered in her mind like a beautiful dream, but as she reached across the bed, her hand met empty space. The sheets beside her were cold, suggesting Kamal had been gone for hours. Initially, she assumed he had risen, early to make final preparations for their honeymoon journey. After all, Kamal was known for his meticulous attention to detail. Sarah took her time getting ready, savoring the memories of their perfect wedding day as she packed the last few items for their trip. However, as the morning progressed, an unsettling feeling began to creep into her consciousness. Kamal's luggage remained untouched in the corner of the suite. His phone lay on the bedside table, completely powered down, something entirely out of character for a man who was always connected to his business responsibilities. Perhaps he went to the hotel gym, she thought, trying to quell the growing anxiety in her chest. But a quick call to the front desk confirmed that no one had seen him in any of the hotel's facilities that morning. Sarah's hand trembled as she picked up her own phone to call Layla. Her sister-in-law answered on the first ring, her voice still groggy with sleep. "Sarah, is everything all right? Aren't you supposed to be heading to the airport soon?" "Layla, is Kamal with you? Did he mention having any early morning meetings?" Sarah struggled to keep her voice steady as she explained the situation. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When Layla spoke again, her voice had lost all traces of sleepiness. "Stay where you are. I'm coming to you right now." Within 30 minutes, the honeymoon suite had become the center of intense activity. Layla arrived with Hassan, Kamal's business advisor, who immediately began making calls to Kamal's closest associates and business contacts. Amira joined them shortly after, her face pale with concern, but maintaining a composed demeanor that somehow made the situation feel even more serious. "This isn't like him," Amira said, pacing the suite's living room. "Kamal would never leave without explanation, especially not today of all days." She paused, exchanging a meaningful look with Hassan that Sarah couldn't quite interpret. Sarah sat on the edge of the sofa, still in her morning robe, clutching the leather-bound journal Kamal had given her the night before. The empty pages seemed to mock their plans for a shared future. Layla sat beside her, holding her hand tightly, while Hassan spoke in hushed Arabic on his phone in the corner. "The security cameras," Sarah suddenly realized, standing up. "The hotel must have security footage of the corridors and exits." Hassan nodded, already dialing the hotel's security office. Within moments, they discovered that the camera system had experienced an unusual technical malfunction during the early morning hours, leaving a gap in the surveillance footage. As the hours passed, the suite filled with more family members, each arrival bringing a new wave of tension. Uncle Fahad appeared around noon, his face unreadable as he consulted with Hassan in whispered tones. Sarah noticed how he kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking, his expression a mixture of calculation and something else she couldn't quite identify. Sarah's parents, who had planned to depart that afternoon, cancelled their flight immediately upon hearing the news. Elena held her daughter close, murmuring prayers in Spanish, while Karim engaged in intense discussions with the Al-Rashid family members, his knowledge of Arabic culture and customs proving invaluable in navigating the sensitive situation. "We should contact the authorities," Sarah insisted as afternoon approached, but she was surprised by the family's reluctance. Uncle Fahad stepped forward, his voice smooth but firm. "Let's not be hasty," he said. "In our culture, we prefer to handle family matters privately first. Give us some time to utilize our connections and resources. A public investigation could potentially harm both Kamal's reputation and the company's standing." Layla, however, supported Sarah's instinct. "This isn't about culture or reputation," she argued. "My brother is missing. We need all the help we can get to find him." As the debate continued, Sarah retreated to the bedroom, overwhelmed by the competing voices and tensions. She found herself standing before the mirror where just yesterday she had admired her wedding dress. Now she wore the same beautiful necklace Amira had given her, but it felt heavier somehow, weighted with uncertainty. Looking down at her engagement ring, where the merged cultural designs caught the late afternoon light, Sarah made a decision. Whether the family approved or not, she would not sit idly by while her husband was missing. She was no longer just Sarah Martinez, the girl from Texas straddling two cultures. She was Sarah Al-Rashid, and she would use every resource at her disposal to find answers. Opening the leather journal, she turned to the first blank page. Instead of the happy memories they had planned to record, she began documenting every detail she could remember from the previous night and that morning. Something told her that every small observation might prove important in understanding what had happened to Kamal. The days following Kamal's disappearance blurred together in a haze of anxiety and determination. Sarah refused to leave the Al-Rashid family mansion, where she had moved temporarily at Amira's insistence. Every morning, she woke hoping to find Kamal had returned, only to face another day of uncertainty. Despite the family's initial reluctance, Sarah had insisted on filing a formal report with the authorities. The detective assigned to the case, Inspector Rahman, maintained a professional demeanor as he interviewed each family member. Sarah noticed how his expression changed subtly when Uncle Fahad explained his absence from the wedding reception, citing an urgent business meeting that he struggled to provide details about. "Mrs. Al-Rashid," Inspector Rahman addressed Sarah during a private consultation, "I understand this is a delicate situation involving a prominent family, but I need you to tell me about any unusual interactions or behaviors you observed in the days leading up to your husband's disappearance." Sarah shared her observations about the tension between Kamal and his uncle, the mysterious conversation with Hassan at the wedding, and the suspicious failure of the hotel's security systems. The inspector took detailed notes, his face revealing nothing. Layla proved to be Sarah's strongest ally, helping her navigate the complex dynamics of the family during this crisis. Together, they began piecing together a timeline of events, using Sarah's journal as a foundation for their investigation. "There's something else," Layla confided one evening as they sat in the mansion's library. "The night before the wedding, I overheard Hassan telling Kamal about some concerning financial discrepancies in the company's international accounts. Kamal seemed troubled, but he didn't want to discuss it until after the honeymoon." Sarah added this information to her growing collection of notes. Why wouldn't Hassan mention this to the inspector, she wondered aloud. "Because," Layla explained, lowering her voice, "those accounts were directly overseen by Uncle Fahad. The family's business operations continued under Fahad's temporary leadership, but Sarah noticed how he seemed to be making significant changes to Kamal's initiatives, particularly those involving international partnerships and sustainable energy projects. During a tense family dinner, Fahad announced his intention to restructure several of Kamal's key projects. "In times of uncertainty, we must focus on maintaining our traditional strengths," he declared, his eyes challenging anyone to object. Sarah spoke up, her voice firm despite her racing heart. These projects were Kamal's vision for the future of the company. They represent everything he believes in about bridging cultures and promoting sustainable development. Fahad's response was measured but cold. "My dear, while we appreciate your perspective, You must understand that business decisions need to be made by those with experience in our cultural context. Later that night, Sarah received an unexpected visit from Amira in her room. Kamal's mother carried a small wooden box inlaid with mother-of-pearl. This belonged to Kamal's father, she explained, opening it to reveal a collection of old letters and documents. He always said that in our family, the truth lies in the papers we keep. As Sarah began examining the contents, she discovered correspondence dating back years that hinted at long-standing tensions within the family business. One letter, written by Kamal's father shortly before his passing, expressed concerns about certain business practices and the future direction of the company. Working late into the night, Sarah and Layla carefully documented everything they found. The next morning, Sarah noticed increased activity among the household staff, with several security guards posted in new locations around the mansion. "They're watching us," Layla observed, noting how one guard seemed to pay particular attention to their movements. "Uncle Fahad claims it's for our protection, but I'm not so sure." Sarah's parents, who had extended their stay in Dubai, provided crucial support. Helena's intuitive understanding of family dynamics helped Sarah navigate the complex emotional currents within the household, while Karim's knowledge of Arab business culture offered valuable insights into the underlying tensions. During a private moment in the garden, Karim shared his observations with his daughter. "Remember, Habibti, in traditional family businesses here, power struggles often happen beneath the surface. Watch not just what people say, but what they do not say." Sarah took her father's words to heart as she continued her careful documentation of events and conversations. She noticed how certain family members would fall silent when Uncle Fahad entered a room, how Hassan seemed increasingly nervous during business discussions, and how some of the younger cousins appeared torn between family loyalty and their own suspicions. One afternoon, while reviewing company documents that Layla had helped her access, Sarah discovered something unusual. Several of Kamal's sustainable energy projects had been quietly redirected just days before the wedding, their resources reallocated to more traditional ventures. The timing couldn't be coincidental. "We need to be careful," Layla warned when Sarah shared her findings. "These documents suggest someone was preparing for major changes in the company's direction before Kamal disappeared. If the wrong people discover what we know..." Sarah understood the implications. She was no longer just searching for her husband, she was potentially uncovering something much larger. As she added these new discoveries to her journal, she realized that each answer only led to more questions. What had Kamal discovered that made him a threat? And more importantly, who could she truly trust in her quest for the truth? 3 weeks had passed since Kamal's disappearance, and the Al Rashid mansion had become a maze of whispered conversations and guarded glances. Sarah spent her days methodically piecing together information, transforming her private sitting room into an impromptu investigation center. The elegant space, with its ornate Arabian furnishings, now contained carefully organized documents and notebooks filled with her observations. One morning, as Sarah reviewed the company's financial records that Layla had discreetly provided, Hassan requested an urgent meeting. They met in the mansion's conservatory, where the abundance of tropical plants provided natural privacy from prying eyes. The usually composed business advisor appeared noticeably anxious, constantly adjusting his tie and checking his surroundings. "Mrs. Al-Rashid," Hassan began, his voice barely above a whisper, "there are matters regarding the company that Mr. Kamal was investigating before his absence, information that could explain everything." He glanced nervously at the doorway before continuing. "The sustainable energy projects weren't just about environmental responsibility. They were designed to transform the entire power structure of the region's energy sector." Sarah leaned forward, her heart racing. "What do you mean, Hassan?" Kamal discovered irregularities in how traditional energy contracts were being handled. Someone was manipulating deals to maintain control over conventional energy sources, preventing the transition to sustainable alternatives. He was planning to present his findings to the board after your honeymoon. Before Hassan could elaborate further, they heard footsteps approaching. He quickly excused himself, leaving Sarah with more questions than answers. Later that day, she learned that Hassan had taken an indefinite leave of absence for personal reasons. The disappearance of her key informant only strengthened Sarah's resolve. Working with Layla, she began mapping connections between various company projects and the individuals involved in their management. A pattern emerged, showing how resources had been systematically diverted from Kamal's innovative initiatives to maintain traditional power structures. During this time, Sarah also noticed subtle changes in Amira's behavior. Kamal's mother, who had initially been supportive of the investigation, became increasingly withdrawn. One evening, Sarah found her in Kamal's childhood study, holding an old photograph. "My son always saw the future so clearly," Amira said, her voice thick with emotion. "Just like his father. That clarity, it can be dangerous in our world." She turned to Sarah, her eyes filled with unspoken warnings. "Some truths are better left in the shadows, my dear." The next day, Sarah received an unexpected visit from one of Kamal's younger cousins, Zara, who worked in the company's legal department. Under the pretense of discussing wedding gifts, Zara slipped Sarah a USB drive. "Kamal asked me to review some contracts before the wedding," Zara explained quietly. "I found discrepancies that didn't make sense. Multiple shell companies, all connected to offshore accounts. The timing of their creation coincides with Uncle Fahad's rise to power in the company." Sarah spent the night analyzing the documents on the drive, her hands trembling as she uncovered layers of carefully concealed financial arrangements. The evidence suggested a systematic effort to maintain control over traditional energy resources, while publicly claiming to support sustainable alternatives. The following morning, Sarah noticed increased security measures around the mansion. New guards appeared, and she found herself being escorted whenever she left her room. The pretense of protection had become an obvious means of surveillance. Layla, ever resourceful, created opportunities for private conversations during their daily walks in the mansion's vast gardens. "The board is meeting next week," she informed Sarah during one such walk. "Uncle Fahad is pushing for a complete restructuring of the company's leadership. He's using Kamal's absence to consolidate his control." Sarah's investigation had also revealed an unexpected ally in Mrs. Rahman, the inspector's wife, who taught at the same university where Sarah had studied. Through carefully orchestrated meetings disguised as social calls, Mrs. Rahman provided insights into her husband's official investigation. The inspector believes there's a connection between Kamal's disappearance and certain business transactions that occurred just before your wedding, Mrs. Rahman shared during one such meeting. But he's facing pressure to close the case without a thorough investigation. As Sarah absorbed this information, she recalled something Kamal had said during their courtship. "In our world, power isn't just about money or influence. It's about controlling the narrative." She now understood the truth of those words more than ever. One afternoon, while reviewing the documents from Zara, Sarah discovered a series of emails that made her blood run cold. They revealed plans for a complete corporate takeover, contingent on removing any opposition to traditional energy interests. The timeline for these plans aligned perfectly with her wedding date. As she stared at her computer screen, the pieces began falling into place. The suspicious timing of Hassan's departure, Amira's cryptic warnings, the increased surveillance, it all pointed to a carefully orchestrated plan that had been set in motion long before her wedding day. Sarah looked out her window at the setting sun, its golden light painting the desert landscape in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere out there, Kamal was waiting to be found, and now, armed with mounting evidence and growing allies, she was getting closer to understanding the true nature of his disappearance. The morning of the board meeting dawned with an unusual heaviness in the air. Sarah stood at her window, watching luxury vehicles arrive at the Al Rashid corporate headquarters in the distance. Each car that pulled up represented another player. In this complex game of power and control, she touched the family necklace that Amira had given her, drawing strength from its connection to generations of strong women who had faced their own challenges within these walls. Inside her room, spread across her desk, lay the evidence she and her allies had gathered over the past weeks. The documents revealed a pattern of systematic suppression of sustainable energy initiatives, orchestrated through a network of shell companies and misleading contracts. At the center of it all was Uncle Fahad, whose signature appeared on key documents authorizing these shadowy transactions. "The board meeting starts in 2 hours," Layla announced, entering the room with purpose. Uncle Fahad plans to officially announce a complete restructuring of the company leadership. Once that happens, all of Kamal's projects will be permanently dismantled. Sarah straightened her shoulders, smoothing down her conservative business suit. "Then we make our move before he can make his announcement." They had prepared meticulously for this moment. Sarah had arranged for Inspector Rahman to be present at the meeting, officially to provide an update on the investigation into Kamal's disappearance. More importantly, Zara had carefully documented every irregular transaction and questionable contract, creating a comprehensive report that could not be easily dismissed. As Sarah and Layla made their way to the company headquarters, they noticed they were being followed by 2 black SUVs. "Uncle's security detail," Layla muttered. "He's not taking any chances today." The Al Rashid corporate headquarters rose like a gleaming monument to power and success, its modern architecture a stark contrast to the traditional values it supposedly represented. In the marble-floored lobby, Sarah encountered Amira, who pulled her aside into a quiet alcove. "Whatever happens today," Amira said, her voice trembling slightly, "know that you have proven yourself worthy of being an Al Rashid. Your strength in seeking the truth honors our family's true legacy." The boardroom was an impressive space, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Around the massive table sat the most influential figures in the company, their expressions carefully neutral as Sarah and Layla entered. Uncle Fahad sat at the head of the table, his presence commanding attention. "Ah, Sarah," he said, his tone condescending, "while we appreciate your interest in company matters, this meeting is for board members and essential personnel only." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "As Kamal's wife and a shareholder in this company, I believe I qualify as essential personnel, especially given the nature of what I'm about to present." Before Fahad could object, Inspector Rahman entered the room, followed by Zara carrying a stack of documents. The inspector's presence created an immediate shift in the atmosphere, with several board members exchanging worried glances. "Ladies and gentlemen," Sarah began, her voice clear and confident, "for weeks we've been told that my husband's disappearance was a personal matter, unrelated to business. Today I present evidence that suggests otherwise." She nodded to Zara, who distributed copies of their report to each board member. These documents show a systematic effort to undermine and eventually destroy Kamal's vision for sustainable energy development in the region. They reveal a network of shell companies designed to maintain control over traditional energy resources while publicly claiming to support innovation. The board members began flipping through the pages, their expressions changing from skepticism to concern as they absorbed the information. Uncle Fahad's face remained impassive, but Sarah noticed a slight tremor in his hand as he reached for his water glass. "This is absurd," he declared, attempting to regain control of the situation. "These allegations are nothing but the desperate theories of a grieving widow." Inspector Rahman cleared his throat. "Actually, Mr. Al-Rashid, these documents align perfectly with evidence we've uncovered in our official investigation, including records of substantial transfers to offshore, accounts made the night before Mr. Kamal's disappearance." As the revelations continued, Sarah watched the reactions around the room. Some board members appeared shocked, others seemed unsurprised, as if they had long suspected such activities. But it was Amira's expression that caught her attention, a mixture of sadness and determination that suggested she knew even more than what was being revealed. Suddenly Hassan burst into the boardroom, his usual composure completely shattered. "He's been found," he announced, his voice echoing in the sudden silence. "Kamal has been found." The room erupted into chaos. Sarah felt her knees weaken, and Layla quickly steadied her. Through the commotion, she noticed Uncle Fahad attempting to slip quietly from the room, only to find his path blocked by Inspector Rahman and 2 plainclothes officers. As the news of Kamal's discovery spread through the building, Sarah found herself surrounded by a whirlwind of activity. But amidst the chaos, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of an even more complex chapter in their story. The truth about Kamal's disappearance was finally within reach. But would it be the truth they were prepared to face? The private hospital room was bathed in soft afternoon light when Sarah first saw Kamal. He lay in the bed, appearing thinner and paler than she remembered, but his eyes lit up with recognition when she entered. The medical equipment around him beeped steadily, a rhythmic reminder that he was indeed alive and safe. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice hoarse from disuse. She rushed to his side, careful of the IV lines as she gently embraced him. Tears flowed freely down her face as she felt his arms weakly encircle her. "I never stopped looking for you," she said softly, stroking his face. "I never stopped believing I would find you." Kamal's eyes held a mixture of love and sorrow. "I should have told you everything before the wedding," he said. "I thought I could protect you by keeping you away from the business complications, but I only put you in a more difficult position." Inspector Rahman stood quietly by the door, his notebook ready. "Mr. Al-Rashid, whenever you feel strong enough, we need your statement about what happened." Layla, who had arrived with Sarah, stepped forward protectively. "My brother needs rest. The questioning can wait." But Kamal shook his head. "No, it's time for the truth to come out." He took Sarah's hand, drawing strength from her presence. "It began months before our wedding. I discovered discrepancies in our company's environmental impact reports. The sustainable energy projects I had initiated were being systematically undermined." Sarah nodded, the pieces falling into place. "The shell companies we found in the documents." "Yes," Kamal confirmed. Uncle Fahad had created an elaborate network to maintain control over traditional energy resources. When I confronted him, he tried to convince me it was for the good of the family. That change would destroy everything we had built. As Kamal spoke, Sarah noticed Amira standing in the doorway, listening intently. The older woman's face showed the weight of long-held secrets finally coming to light. "The night of our wedding," Kamal continued, "Hassan brought me urgent information about a board meeting scheduled for the next morning. Uncle Fahad was planning to use my absence during the honeymoon to push through major changes that would have effectively ended our sustainable energy initiatives." Sarah squeezed his hand encouragingly. "That's why you left the suite that night. I went to the office to secure the evidence, but Uncle Fahad was already there. He wasn't alone. He had brought several board members who supported his vision. They tried to pressure me into signing documents that would have given him complete control over the company's direction." Inspector Rahman's pen moved rapidly across his notebook. "And when you refused, they suggested I take an extended vacation to reconsider my position. When I refused again, they had their security team escort me to a private compound outside the city. They thought isolation would convince me to change my mind." Layla's face hardened with anger. "Our own uncle did this to you?" "He believed he was preserving our family's legacy," Kamal said wearily. In his mind, progress was a threat to tradition, but he forgot that our true tradition has always been adaptation and innovation. Sarah shared what she had uncovered during his absence: the financial trails, the suppressed reports, the network of shell companies. Kamal listened with pride growing in his eyes. "You did what I should have done from the beginning," he said. "You faced the truth openly without fear of consequences." A gentle knock at the door interrupted them. It was Hassan, looking simultaneously relieved and ashamed. "I came as soon as I heard," he said, addressing both Kamal and Sarah. "I need to confess my part in all of this." Hassan revealed how he had initially helped Uncle Fahad conceal the financial manipulation, believing it was protecting the company's interests. "But when they took you, it went too far. I couldn't live with my conscience anymore. That's why I started leaving clues for Sarah." As the afternoon wore on, more visitors arrived, board members expressing their shock and support, family members torn between loyalty and justice, and even some of Uncle Fahad's former allies coming forward with additional evidence. Through it all, Sarah never left Kamal's side. They had both been transformed by their ordeal. He had learned the importance of transparency, while she had discovered her own strength and capability. Together, they began discussing their vision for the company's future, one that would honor both tradition and progress. "We'll rebuild everything," Kamal promised, his voice growing stronger, "but this time we'll do it together with complete honesty between us." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the hospital room, Sarah realized that their story had become something more than just a tale of loss and reunion. It was a testament to the power of truth, justice, and the courage to stand up for what's right, even in the face of tradition and family expectations. In the weeks following Kamal's return, the Al-Rashid family and company underwent a profound transformation. The pristine halls of the corporate headquarters buzzed with activity as teams worked to implement sweeping reforms. Sarah and Kamal had established temporary offices adjacent to each other, allowing them to collaborate closely while he continued his recovery. The board had unanimously voted to remove Uncle Fahad from his position, replacing him with a coalition of progressive-minded executives who shared Kamal's vision for sustainable energy. The evidence Sarah had gathered proved instrumental in initiating a comprehensive audit of the company's operations. "Your investigation did more than just find me," Kamal told Sarah one evening as they reviewed proposals in his office. "It exposed systemic issues that had been holding our company back for years." His strength was returning gradually, though the psychological impact of his ordeal remained evident in quiet moments. Sarah had emerged as a respected figure within the company, her unique perspective bridging cultural and generational gaps. She worked closely with Layla to establish new transparency protocols, ensuring that no future projects could be undermined through hidden manipulation. "We're creating something unprecedented," Layla observed during a strategy meeting. "A corporate culture that honors tradition while embracing innovation." She had taken charge of the company's international relations, using her diplomatic skills to rebuild trust with global partners. Amira, too, had found a new role in the family's transformation. She began hosting regular gatherings that brought together different factions of the family, creating a space for open dialogue about the company's future. During one such gathering, she addressed the assembled relatives with quiet authority. "Our family's strength has never come from blind adherence to tradition," she declared. "It comes from our ability to adapt while maintaining our core values of integrity and responsibility." The sustainable energy projects that had been suppressed under Uncle Fahad's leadership were now being revived and expanded. Sarah and Kamal worked together to create a comprehensive development plan that would position the company as a leader in renewable energy across the Middle East. "This is what my father always envisioned," Kamal explained during a presentation to international investors. "A company that serves as a bridge between the old and the new, between tradition and innovation." His voice carried the conviction of someone who had suffered for his principles and emerged stronger. The transformation extended beyond the corporate realm. Sarah and Kamal finally began the personal journey they had planned before their wedding, though in a different way than originally envisioned. They spent evenings in their new home, combining elements of both their cultures as they had always intended. One particular evening, as they sat in their garden watching the sunset, Sarah noticed Kamal working on something in the leather-bound journal he had given her as a wedding gift. "What are you writing?" she asked, curious about his intense concentration. "I'm documenting everything we've learned," he replied, showing her pages filled with his thoughts and observations, not just about the business, but about family, trust, and the courage to stand up for what's right. "This isn't just our story anymore. It's a blueprint for future generations." The journal had become a symbol of their journey, its pages now filled with both challenges and triumphs. Sarah added her own entries, creating a detailed account of their shared experience and the lessons they had learned. Their work began attracting attention beyond the business world. Educational institutions invited them to speak about corporate ethics and cultural integration. Sarah's unique perspective as someone who had navigated multiple cultural identities while fighting for justice resonated with young entrepreneurs and students. "Your story gives us hope," a young woman told Sarah after one such presentation. "It shows that we don't have to choose between honoring our heritage and pursuing progress." The Al-Rashid Foundation, under Layla's guidance, established programs to support cross-cultural business initiatives and environmental sustainability. Their projects The foundation became a platform for promoting transparency in corporate governance while fostering innovation in renewable energy. As their influence grew, Sarah and Kamal remained focused on their core mission, creating a legacy of ethical business practices that would benefit future generations. They understood that their story had become more than a personal triumph. It was a testament to the possibility of positive change in the face of entrenched resistance. The sun set over Dubai's skyline, casting a golden glow across the city's blend of traditional architecture and modern innovation. In their garden, Sarah and Kamal continued working on their shared vision, their journey a living proof that love, truth, and courage could transform not just a family, but an entire corporate culture. 1 year after Kamal's return, the Al Rashid Corporation had become a model of sustainable business practices and cultural integration. The company's headquarters, once a symbol of traditional power, now showcased innovative environmental technologies alongside traditional Arabic architecture. Solar panels gleamed on its roof, while the lobby featured a living wall of desert plants, demonstrating the harmony between progress and heritage. Sarah sat in her executive office, reviewing the latest reports on their renewable energy initiatives. The company had successfully launched 3 major solar projects across the region, creating thousands of jobs and reducing dependency on conventional energy sources. Her window offered a view of their newest installation, a vast array of solar panels stretching toward the horizon, their surfaces catching the morning light. "The quarterly results are in," Layla announced, entering the office with a tablet in hand. "Our sustainable energy division has exceeded all projections. The board is particularly impressed with the community engagement programs you developed." The programs had been Sarah's initiative, combining traditional Arab hospitality with modern, environmental education. Local communities were not just benefiting from clean energy, they were becoming active participants in the sustainable revolution. Kamal appeared in the doorway looking energized after his meeting with international investors. His recovery had been remarkable, though he now approached business with a different perspective. "The European consortium is fully committed," reported. "They're impressed by our transparency measures and community involvement." The transformation of the Al Rashid Corporation had rippled through the business community, inspiring other traditional companies to embrace change. Sarah and Kamal regularly hosted delegations from across the region, sharing their experience of balancing innovation with cultural values. That evening, they hosted a special dinner at their home to celebrate the launch of the Al Rashid Foundation's newest initiative, a scholarship program for young entrepreneurs focusing on sustainable development. The guest list included family members, business partners, and community leaders. Amira, who had become a respected voice in promoting corporate responsibility, addressed the gathering. "A year ago, we faced a crisis that could have torn our family apart. Instead, it led us to discover our true strength, our ability to embrace change while honoring our values." The gathered guests represented the new face of the Al Rashid family's influence. Young innovators alongside experienced business leaders, traditional scholars in conversation with environmental scientists. The atmosphere hummed with engaging discussions in multiple languages, embodying the cross-cultural dialogue that Sarah and Kamal had always envisioned. During the dinner, Hassan, who had become the company's chief compliance officer, shared the results of their latest corporate governance audit. "We've established new standards for transparency in the region," he reported proudly. "Other companies are now looking to us as a model for ethical business practices." Sarah noticed how Kamal's younger cousins, including Zara, had stepped into leadership roles, bringing fresh perspectives to traditional business units. The next generation of Al Rashids was proving that preserving heritage didn't mean resisting progress. Later that night in their garden, Sarah and Kamal took a moment to reflect on their journey. The leather-bound journal lay open between them, its pages now filled with their shared history and vision for the future. "Remember when you first gave me this journal?" Sarah asked, touching the worn leather cover. "You said it was for writing our story." Kamal smiled, taking her hand. "And what a story it's become. Not just about us, but about the power of standing up for what's right about finding strength in our differences rather than letting them divide us. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent call from the hospital. Their newly established Renewable Energy Medical Center had just welcomed its first solar-powered operating room. The facility represented everything they had fought for: innovation in service of community, progress honoring tradition. As they prepared to visit the hospital, Sarah caught her reflection in a window. She saw not just the girl from Texas who had dreamed of bridging cultures, but a woman who had helped transform an entire corporate empire. The Al-Rashid necklace still graced her neck, but now it symbolized not just family heritage, but the power of evolution and change. The night sky above Dubai sparkled with stars, witnessing the continued unfolding of their story. In the distance, the solar arrays they had built caught the moonlight, a testament to their vision of a future where tradition and innovation danced in perfect harmony. 5 years had passed since the transformation of the Al-Rashid Corporation began. The Dubai skyline had evolved, now featuring the distinctive silhouette of the Al-Rashid Sustainable Development Center, its innovative architecture seamlessly, blending solar technology with traditional Islamic design. Inside her office at the top of this remarkable building, Sarah stood before a wall of awards and recognitions, each one telling a part of their remarkable journey. The morning sun streamed through the smart glass windows as she prepared for a special ceremony. The Al-Rashid Foundation was launching its most ambitious initiative yet, a regional network of renewable energy research centers, each designed to foster collaboration between traditional energy companies and innovative startups. "The guests are beginning to arrive," Layla announced, entering the office. She had become the Foundation's executive director, her natural diplomatic skills perfect for bridging the gap between old and new perspectives. "And there's someone special who wants to see you first." Sarah's face lit up as her 4-year-old daughter Amira, named after her grandmother, rushed into the office, her dark curls bouncing with each step. Behind her came Kamal, carrying their 6-month-old son, Karim, named after Sarah's father. Their children were growing up in a world where cultural boundaries were seen not as barriers, but as bridges. "Mama, look what I drew." Little Amira held up a colorful picture, showing their family standing beneath the sun and wind turbines. Sarah's heart swelled with pride. Even at her young age, their daughter understood the importance of their work. The ceremony brought together faces both familiar and new. Elena and Karim, Sarah's parents, had flown in from Texas, bringing with them special decorations that combined Mexican and Arabic motifs. The older Amira, now a respected matriarch, sat in the front row, her presence a reminder of how far they had come. As Sarah took the podium to address the gathered crowd, she could see the legacy of their struggle and triumph reflected in the faces before her. Young entrepreneurs sat alongside established business leaders, all united in their commitment to sustainable progress. 5 years ago, Sarah began, we stood at a crossroads. We had to choose between clinging to the past and embracing the future. Today, we celebrate not just the success of our sustainable energy initiatives, but the proof that tradition and innovation can coexist and strengthen each other. The presentation that followed showcased the impact of their work. Communities transformed by accessible clean energy, traditional industries revitalized through sustainable practices, and a new generation of leaders emerging from their educational programs. Kamal joined her on stage, their presence together symbolizing the union of cultures and ideas that had made it all possible. "Our journey began with a love story," he added, taking Sarah's hand. "Not just between two people, but between two visions of the future. Today, that love has grown into something that touches countless lives." The ceremony concluded with the announcement of the Sarah and Kamal Al-Rashid Scholarship for Cross-Cultural Innovation, a program designed to support young people who dream of bridging divides through sustainable business practices. Later that evening, the family gathered in their garden, the same space where many crucial conversations had taken place years before. The leather-bound journal, now accompanied by several volumes, sat on a table nearby, its pages containing the full story of their journey. Little Amira climbed onto her father's lap as he opened the latest volume. "Tell me the story again, Papa," she requested, her eyes bright with interest, about how Mama saved the company and found you. Kamal smiled at Sarah over their daughter's head. It's a story about love, Habibti. Love for family, for our planet, and for doing what's right. But most importantly, it's a story about how the greatest changes often come from having the courage to embrace both who we are and who we can become. Sarah watched as her husband began telling their story to their children, his voice gentle, yet full of passion. The garden around them flourished with both desert plants and specimens from around the world, a living testament to the beauty that comes from combining different traditions. The sun set over Dubai, its rays catching the solar panels that had become an integral part of the city's architecture. In the distance, wind turbines turned lazily against the darkening sky, while the traditional minarets of mosques stood in harmony with modern structures. As the stars began to appear, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them here. Their story had become more than just a personal triumph. It was a beacon of hope for others facing similar challenges, proof that love, courage, and determination could transform not just a family or a company, but an entire way of thinking. The Al Rashid legacy would live on, not just through their children or their company, but through every life touched by their vision of a world where tradition and progress dance together under the same sky, where love knows no boundaries, and where the future is built on the foundation of understanding and respect.